Okay, this is a weekly STEP meeting. Our format is as follows. A speaker is asked to talk for 25 to 30 minutes on the STEP of that week, followed by discussion or questions until 7 p.m. You can find these weekly meetings on our YouTube page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. And the most important thing is don't forget to smash the like button. So subscribe and share. That brings us to the speaker portion of the meeting. On this day, April 5th, 2021, Monday, in Doylestown, PA, at the Monday night 6 p.m. Stay Alive Literature and Step Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is Marin, and he'll be sharing his experience on Step 1. So please welcome Marin.
All right. Thank you. My name is Marin Harwood. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. Really awesome to be here. I'm going to try to project, to fill the room with these Step 1 words. Here's the interesting part about Step 1, right? So this is a lot of experience that comes along with Step 1. We can always kind of roll back and look at our own war stories, right? And I was taught a long time ago, it feels like a long time ago, that my war stories can't even keep me sober, so my war stories aren't going to keep you sober at all. Maybe for relatability purposes, but when it comes to getting well and recovering from alcoholism, my war stories don't do all that much. They can help a lot of times one-on-one individual step work with somebody, discussing Step 1. So what we'll do is I'll kind of pepper a few of those in. You're going to see me looking at my phone. I'm not updating my Facebook status. I created like a 12-step syllabus guide to kind of help walk through each step. If anyone wants a copy of this, they're more than happy to see me after the meeting. It's built and designed for someone who is trying to help other alcoholics but doesn't know where to start. Basically, it's just like a guide on pages, paragraphs, where to start and go from there. So I'm not doing anything silly on here. I actually have something important pulled up. So that being said, we're going to look at Step 1, right? We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. So looking at the first, obviously, the major word in Step 1 is the word admitted, right? Automatically, I have an issue with the word admit. If you think about it, anyone ever have to admit something to a judge? Or a spouse, or anything where that makes them look bad or in a humiliated sense. So the word admit, I already have an issue with, right? It might be underlying subconscious, I might not know that, right? I have to admit that powerlessness over alcohol, right? And so in the very beginning, this is something that, I can look at my experience and kind of garner the understanding of my powerlessness over alcohol. It kind of gets me in the door of AA, whatever consequence it was to get you in here, internal spiritual malady, right? That's the difference between alcohol and alcoholism, right? We'll get to that. The 3 letters, ISM, right? I suffer from an internal spiritual malady. Alcohol is a spirit, therefore it solves my internal spiritual malady. It's called wine and spirits for a very particular reason, right? So that being said, I come into AA and I suffer from a spiritual problem, right? And I'm powerless over alcohol. It's very simple when we kind of look at what alcohol as far as powerlessness does, but we have to define it a little bit deeper so the alcoholic or maybe potential alcoholic can understand what it is we truly suffer from. So anyone that's actually started drinking and then maybe they're a problem drinker, whatever you want to call it, and then attempted to stop on their own, right? And then drank again, that's the term we call a relapse, right? So here's the thing. Every time I relapsed, I did it sober. Alcohol's not my problem. And if I can understand that if alcohol's not my problem, therefore, what is my problem, right? Remember, alcohol is a solution to the spiritual malady. So what's the problem? My thinking, right? My thinking is the problem. So my thinking says, it's going to be different this time. I'm only having one beer, or I'm at a family function, I can't get drunk here, right? Or whatever the case is. Fill in your excuse, whatever that might be, right? And so if my mind is the problem, right, powerlessness over alcohol implies, again, that there's something in between my ears that has a short circuit when it comes to alcohol. Now, in many other respects, and the book talks about it beautifully over and over again, I might have a perfectly good willpower when it comes to other things. Maybe it's a good work ethic. right? Maybe it's whatever. I mean, maybe good student, whatever the case is. I might have will towards somewhere else. When it comes to respect for alcohol, it completely goes out the window, right? So I have to understand what it is that I suffer from. So Dr. Silkworth, in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, writes the doctor's opinion. Right? And the doctor's opinion is really where Bill Wilson, co-founder of AA, gets an idea of what it is that he truly suffers from. He does this at Towns Hospital in New York, right? So at Towns Hospital, Dr. Silkworth discusses things with Bill in the course of his first, well, two really, and then the third treatment, Bill kind of gets something here. In the first couple treatments, he understands a little bit more about alcoholism, right? So meaning the physical allergy and mental obsession. What is it that we mean by that? What is this physical allergy, right? So here's an example. If I'm, let's say, allergic to strawberries, okay? Every time I put strawberries in my system, my system or I react abnormally. Maybe my tongue swells up, throat swells up, right? Something bad happens where I don't, the thought of putting another strawberry in my system is absolutely, shouldn't happen. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, I just won't eat them anymore. The difference with alcohol, with somebody like me, here's my abnormal reaction. Alcohol, a liquid, right, a solution, is a central nervous system depressant. What alcohol does, and if you can ask anyone who's a normal drinker, you can ask them, it's fun, actually. To me, it's fun. What's it like when you drink, right? I know what it's like, as an alcoholic when they drink. Asking someone who's non-alcoholic, what's it like when you drink? They're going to say any number of things that kind of align underneath the same umbrella, right? They feel out of control, right? They start to feel they get a little upset stomach, lightheaded, right? They kind of understand that maybe they have some things to do the next day or whatever the case is, right? Sometimes they might go overboard a little bit. They get sick for a few days or whatever, and then they temper it down, and so it doesn't become an issue. So here's the difference. Like, my reaction to alcohol is very abnormal, right? I don't feel out of control. I feel in control. All right? I don't feel antisocial or I want to stay away from people. I feel extra social. It's being a central nervous system depressant. Like, most people, when they drink, they get tired, yawn a lot, maybe take a little nap or whatever. Like, I get energy from it. Like, it pulls me up here. It makes life exhilarating. It changes in here and in here when I put it into my system. No wonder alcoholics drink, right? I mean, it is a solution to the problem of alcoholism. I know that's not necessarily the most popular opinion in the world, but alcohol is a treatment for alcoholism. That's essentially why we drink, right? So if the physical part of alcoholism was the only thing that we suffered from, all we'd have to do is go to one detox, and then we would understand, oh, when I put it in my system, I react abnormally, so I shouldn't do that. Much like the strawberry analogy. The difference is there's something called the phenomenon of craving. Right, so the alcoholic has, again, the sober mind says alcohol is a good idea, in spite of past consequences. If you've attended a lot of AA meetings or you haven't, sometimes you'll hear people say this as advice, which doesn't come out of our book, but they'll say things like, play the tape all the way through. Right? And what that implies is that, and they'll say, think about your last drunk, and you won't drink again. Right? That on the surface for a non-alcoholic is stellar advice. Right? For the real alcoholic, I don't have with sufficient force of memory to think about the humiliation of even a week or a month ago, or even longer. Right? I literally cannot play the tape all the way through. I suffer from what is called dynamic memory. Dynamic memory is a scientific condition that every single human being has, and if we didn't have it, the human race would not have survived up to this point. Dynamic memory is, for a couple of examples, all right, on the male side of our species, dynamic memory is when we used to go out, before maybe we were even talking to each other, we were grunting at each other, right? We'd go out with our sharp objects and go out and kill a mammoth of some kind, right? Kill it, hack it up, drag it all the way back to the encampment. Sometimes this took days, weeks, right? And then as we would sit back and watch, right, our tribe eat from the bounties of what we caught, we would forget about the pain, how long it took, how hungry we were the whole time, and we would just think of the dynamic memory is remembering just the good stuff about what had just happened. The same thing happens in the human condition when it comes to procreation with women and having more than one baby. I have some experience with that. My wife and I have 3 beautiful children, right? And during each of the pregnancies/labors, if you would have probably asked my wife if she would have had a coherent moment, she would probably have said, "I'm not going to do this again," right? And then, right, then what happens? The baby is there, right? And human beings are born with the 3 pillars of spirituality: faith, love, and trust. Anyone that's ever held a baby knows that. And that alone was enough for her to forget about what had happened for those 9 months and just to remember the result at the end. Dynamic memory has, for lack of a better term for it, is the greatest thing that kind of happened to the human condition, or else we would have just given up and we wouldn't be here today, probably. Now, that being said, dynamic memory, when it comes to the alcoholic, will kill us, right? Because we don't remember, right, the bad stuff that happened. We don't remember the nights in the drunk tank. We don't remember those, standing in line at the local sanitarium to get our meds, right? We don't remember that stuff, right? We remember, going to the game. We remember hanging with our buddies. We remember whatever it is, whatever those moments are for you, right? Those are what we remember. So dynamic memory will kill an alcoholic if left unchecked. So the real problem for the alcoholic centers in the mind. Right? So there's when it comes to the powerlessness, right, over alcohol, I can't think my way out of alcoholism. Right? So that's where the powerlessness comes in. I'm basically trying to power a car with a AAA battery, and I still think I can manage, and I still think I can do it, in spite of what had happened in the past. I got no chance, really. And even people from the outside are looking at it saying, "I don't think you can do this again. I don't know if you have another one in you," right? And then here we go again, as the book calls, well-known stages of a spree. Right? So then the second half of the step, we look at unmanageability, right? So we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, right? So here's another example: powerless over alcohol, laying in bed, right? Coming off of maybe you were the type that got hungover, maybe you weren't, whatever it was. We wake up in the morning remorseful at what we had done the night before. We wake up and we say, "You know what? We can't do this again. I'm done forever. I definitely can't do this anymore." Or I'm sitting in front of somebody that loves me and they have that look on their face, that look of sorrow, despair, pain, anguish, anger, that look, right? And if you're like me, you're picturing that person in your mind and what that look looks like. That alone can't keep us sober, right? But that look, right, and then me sobbing, right? The tears of remorse still wet on my shirt. I'm driving to the state store. I want to stop. I wish beyond anything else that I could stop, right? And if you would attach me to a lie detector test while I'm staring at my mother sobbing in front of me and begging me to stop, and I would have told, if you hooked me up to a lie detector test, I would have passed it with flying colors, that I was going to stop forever. I just don't have sufficient power to do so, right? So now unmanageability comes in. Unmanageability is an internal condition. Your life or my life on paper has nothing to do with unmanageability, right? So stop comparing ourselves to the alcoholic who's out there living underneath a bridge. Stop comparing ourselves to the alcoholic that sleeps down in Kensington. Let's stop comparing ourselves to that. We might live in the nice little suburbs of Doylestown, and I can't relate to the guy who slept underneath the bridge. But the unmanageability, here's where we can relate to unmanageability. I have an utter inability to manage my emotional states. So when something good happens, elation, greatest thing ever, epic, best day, whatever the case is. Something seemingly bad happens, down in the dumps, depressed, worst thing ever. Can't cheer me up, right? Need something outside of me to fix what's going on the inside. There's no wonder that some of us get misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder. A lot of therapists and counselors, they'll hear stuff like that, and their instant thought is bipolar disorder. But I just don't have an ability to manage anywhere in between my emotional states. I'm either here or here, and nowhere in the middle does that exist for somebody like me. I can't. Here's an example, right? So having a discussion with someone, right? I feel a feeling. Let's just call it that, right? I feel a feeling, whatever that feeling is, right? Normal people are people that are emotionally, they have emotional sobriety, right? What they can do is they can take that feeling that they have, they can label it, right? And they can act appropriately, with that feeling. I'm gonna label it. I'm gonna either set it aside for later, right, and discuss it later, or I'm gonna bring it out to the forefront and I'm gonna be able to discuss it on the spot, right? You lost me at feeling the feeling, right? I want that to go away, right? Alcohol is a solution to that internal imbalance that I have, right? And it's funny because people a lot of times will say, Marin, I just want balance in my life. You know, and I mean, we're probably have all said that. And balance on the surface sounds like an amazing thing. But it also sounds, balance sounds a lot like manageability to me. And so if my life is unmanageable at this point, my life is unbalanceable at this point on my own as well. Right? I'd love to be able to balance things out perfectly, right? But what is that me doing? Manipulating this, and this, playing God again. Right? I got to get out of the balancing business. I got to get out of the managing business, basically get fired from all that. First Step experience says that I manage my life directly into institutions, not death just yet, right? And insanity, right? Which we get to the second step and we kind of understand the insanity part of all this. But now from the book, right, let's kind of define, as the big book describes, as a step one experience, okay? So this is on page 34. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chisel a little bit of this out and then discuss kind of what it is that they're discussing here, and then see, again, where does this fit in and where's the relatability to it, right? So in the middle of 34, it says, for those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. There you go. There's the question. We walk into AA, we wonder, how do I stop altogether, right? That's the initial question. We are assuming, of course, the reader desires to stop. Here's probably one of the least asked questions in AA. So a newcomer walks in the door, right? They don't know what AA is from anything else, right? Maybe they read a couple things online. Maybe they did a survey. Maybe they did the 50-question survey on psychologyusa.com, whatever it was. And they're just like, okay, you might be alcoholic, so let's go to AA. So we walk into AA. How do we know if the reader desires to stop? We ask them. Instead of asking the newcomer, hey, how are you? Maybe the question should be, do you have a desire to stop drinking? That's the only requirement to be a member of AA, and yet we're not even asking that question. We're assuming they want to when they walk in the door. Why aren't we asking those questions? It's easier not to. It's easier to ask them how they are. It's easier to save them a seat. There's the coffee. And we'll see you next week. It's way easier to do that. It's much more difficult to say if the reader desires to stop, right? Whether such a person, right, this being the reader or newcomer in this example, can quit upon a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will drink or not. Again, we can ask this in an explicit way. Have you ever told yourself you were not going to drink today and you did anyway? Right? Again, we have the lack of power of choice whether we drink or not. We have to hammer that point home. I don't wake up in the morning even today after over 6 years of abstinence and wake up and choose not to drink. I don't have the power to choose whether I drink or not. Again, that's the point that needs to be hammered home. I could choose whether I grow spiritually. Different story. We're either growing towards one spirit or another. Right? Carl Jung wrote a letter to Bill Wilson. There was a letter correspondence back in 1961. And Jung said, the alcoholic suffers from spiritus contra spiritum, which is a Latin term, spirit versus spirit. Alcohol being, I'm either growing towards the spirit of alcohol or I'm going towards the spiritual awakening, whatever the case is. And that's when our daily reset button in the morning is. We got a choice. Which way are we going to grow? I don't choose whether I drink or not. Right? I choose which direction to go spiritually. Many of us felt we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it. This utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. Right? The sentence there, this is the baffling feature of alcoholism, not of alcohol. Right? Even in how it works, it talks about alcohol, right? How we deal with alcohol. We deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Alcohol itself is not cunning, baffling, powerful. Let's look at that sentence, right? We deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Let's look at the way the sentence is actually designed. It doesn't say it doesn't say alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful. It says that the way we deal with alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful. Right? So that's the mindset, again, on alcohol's not powerful. Think about it for a second. I might have a mental obsession to drink it, but that doesn't make it slide over into my hand and my arm like rapidly fire it up into my face. Like, it's not that powerful, right? But my mental obsession on it is. I might have a physical craving that's beyond my mental control, and it almost feels like it's powerful. But the power that it does is it does something for me, right? It's not what alcohol does to me that makes me alcoholic. It's what alcohol does for me that makes me alcoholic. So if I can understand, it's not that I drink 2 quarts of vodka a day, or maybe I drink 3 beers a day. It doesn't matter if I got a DUI. It doesn't matter if I lost my job. It doesn't matter how many relationships I busted. It doesn't matter how many jobs I lost or cars I cracked up. None of that matters. None of those things make us alcoholic. It's what alcohol does to me spiritually that makes me alcoholic. And that's why, again, unmanageability is not my life on paper. On a personal level, if you looked at my life on paper a little over 6 years ago, right? Wife, 2 kids at the time. We have 3 now, right? 2 kids at the time. Good earning capacity. 2 cars in the driveway. A driveway, right? A house, a place to live, right? On paper, my life actually looks pretty good. Really. And that's not everyone's experience. But here's the thing. I can tell you what's very similar all the way across the board, whether you have that, whether you're living underneath a bridge down in Kensington. Here's the similarity. My soul was rotting from the inside out. I couldn't have an intimate personal relationship with anybody. I was a taker of everything. I was an emotional taker. I was a physical taker. All of it, whatever I could get my hands on. And if you turned your back on me, that's great. I'll find somebody else, right? That was it. Alcohol did something for me. It turned off that moral compass, right? So it actually talks about that in the doctor's opinion, where we needed, as Silkworth calls it, moral psychology, right? Moral means difference between right and wrong, and psychology means of the mind, right? So there's something that needed to change, right? It called it an entire psychic change. Right? That's the way the doctor's opinion describes it. Right? And so my mindset needed to change entirely. So now when we look, as we read a little bit further on 34, so we're going to look at, right? So how then shall we help our readers determine to their own satisfaction whether they are one of us? Right? This is the writers of the book who are alcoholics. We're going to kind of impress upon the reader, are you one of us? We're not here to diagnose you. For the record, this is a self-diagnosis deal. And once the self-diagnosis comes in, then self should go out entirely. Right? We don't add anything in AA, we subtract. We subtract self out of it. So once I have a self-diagnosis, I don't have a self-fix. I can't fix me. I can't fix you. I can't fix me. Right? So we need to find out what do we got to do? The experiment of quitting for a period of time will be helpful, but we think the reader can that we can render an even greater service to an alcoholic sufferers and perhaps to the medical fraternity. So we shall describe some of the mental states preceding a relapse into drinking. For obviously this is the crux of the problem, right? And crux is defined as the hard problem or crucial point, right? So alcohol is not the crucial point. The point is the thinking that precedes, right, the first drink, okay? The example that the book gives us is this guy named Jim. Jim's a car salesman, right? Right up my alley, my kind of guy, okay? So Jim is a guy who owns an automobile place, a sales showroom, so to speak. He owns it, right? He got it, he inherited it, whatever. And so through his drinking, he lost it. And he went away to some course of treatment somewhere, right? And then they told him what he suffers from. A couple of alcoholic AA members met with him, chatted with him. You guys have something going on, that's great. So then what Jim does is he goes back to the automobile industry and becomes a salesperson, as they call it, for the concern he once owned, for the business he once owned, right? So the mental states preceding the first drink, here's how we're going to kind of start with this. Now, if you consider resentment, right? Resentment means it's a Latin word from the word centaur, which means to feel, right? To re-feel the same emotion over and over and over again. So now, right, Jim is now at the place that he used to own selling vehicles. There's I would assume, deep-seated resentment already, right? Watching the higher-ups run the business, and he's just kind of on the sales floor doing his thing. He discusses having a talk with the boss, right, which was nothing too serious. But he talks about that happening on Tuesday. Always the question is what happened on Monday. He doesn't tell us, right? He kind of just gives us, so this day I had to talk with the boss. And then he decided to go out to the country to find a prospect for a car. Anyone who's ever purchased a car before knows they don't go to their local diner to buy a car. They go to the dealership. So he has a talk with the boss, and then his mind says, I'm going to go out to the country to find a prospect for a car. The prospects come to him. So think about already. He's so resentful he has to leave the place where business comes to him, where he makes his living. And he left there to go find a prospect for a car, right? So he goes out there, he sits down, and he decides, you know what? He's going to get something to eat. So he orders a glass of milk, right? And he orders a sandwich. So he eats the sandwich, right? Drinks the milk, and then thought maybe I should have another. What does that sound a lot like? Sounds a lot like emotional eating, right? Maybe something that we can consider like they call it comfort food for a reason, right? When I eat it, I feel comfortable. I feel ease and comfort from that, right? So there's the mental state preceding the first drink coming up there too. He's eating more compulsively to feel better. He's using something from the outside to fix something on the inside. That resentment, right? So he drinks the milk, eats the sandwich. Then the thought comes in. If I just mix some whiskey in my milk, it won't hurt me on a full stomach. Now, most people, when they think about that, first they think that's disgusting. Right? Who would do that, right? But then the second thought is, well, wait, that doesn't make any... Why would he do that? Right? He already lost everything worthwhile in life to him, right? He lost a successful business, a lucrative automotive business that they called it, right? Why would he drink again? Because he thought it wouldn't hurt him on a full stomach. Just like, for example, well, it's only a beer. Not going to hurt me. It's only a Zima. Right? Hard seltzer, no big. It's water. It's a seltzer, no big deal, right? And a lot of times with the alcoholic, right, the first thought might be, well, the doctor prescribed me the Xanax, right? Or I went in, and I got it from my doctor, right? It's medical marijuana. That's a lot of time. It's the same thought process. Different substance, right? But it's still, again, it's the same thought process. It's not going to hurt me this time. No big deal. Justification, right? So he drinks the whiskey and he has another one, and all of a sudden he's back at the hospital again and realizing that he's getting a firm realization of his condition. That's all step one is. We get a firm realization of what our condition is. My condition is I can't choose whether I drink or not. I have a physical allergy when it comes to the alcohol. I might process it a little different than normal people, right? Here's how strong the mental states are preceding the first drink. Anyone ever been kind of a little bit shaky and they go into the liquor store, right? Or the state store as they call them in Pennsylvania, which I still don't get, but anyway. They go into the state store in PA and you grab your favorite bottle of whatever, Dr. McGillicuddy's, right? And you're standing in line and you have it in your hand. We hold it like this a lot of times. We make sure not to drop it, right? We're holding it in our hands and we already have been ease and comfort. We haven't even put it in our system yet. And we're already like, That's how strong the mental states are. I don't even have it in my system yet. And my detox symptoms are going away. Right? That's how powerful this is mentally. What we have to kind of understand is the mental states preceding the first drink, that is basically, for lack of a better term, fighting the proper enemy. When it I can't fight alcohol. I lose 9 out of 9 times when I fight alcohol. I'm not good at battling, right, the liquid itself. I have an amazingly weakened willpower when it comes to that, right? And other substances too. I know this is AA, but the point is, it doesn't matter what name is on the bottle, right? The solution is still the same. Right? And so my mental states are amazingly weakened when it comes to alcohol, right? So I'm powerless there. Every time I want to stop, I really want to stop, I can't. And my emotional states are imbalanced, right? So it sounds like if that's our first step experience, plug in your story, whatever that is, right? My story looks a lot like detoxing again on mom and dad's couch, wondering how I got through another one, right? And why they even took me back in again. Right? Mine looks like sleeping in a car in upstate New York in a 1998 Ford Contour and not seeing anything wrong with it. I'm not sleeping outside. I'm in the middle of winter in upstate New York in a Ford Contour, and I don't see any problems with it. I can't see beyond it. Right? I think that's my abnormal life becomes the only normal one. And I'm not drinking at 7 in the morning to party down. Right? I'm drinking at 7 a.m. because there's something wrong with me on the inside, and alcohol seems to fix it for a little bit. Just enough. Just take the edge off. Right? We talk about that all the time. Right? We just want to take the edge off. Right? What is the edge? The edge is me. It's my thinking. It's my internal states. I just want to remove me. I just want the shuffling of papers in my head to stop for just a couple seconds. The rat race or hamster on the wheel, call it whatever you want. But it's making a lot of noise, and I just want it to stop. First step experience is my brain wants relief, and my body will follow. Right? Anyone ever have this experience? Right? Driving down the road, no intention on stopping anywhere at a state store or liquor store or whatever, no intention, and yet all of a sudden you're parked on the outside of it with the money in your hand. How did that happen? My brain needs relief and my body will follow. Here's a couple other examples of how people, and I've noticed this in AA and I've experienced some of this in AA, how people will not be drinking but try to solve the internal spiritual malady, right? Compulsive eating, right, which we discussed already. Compulsive shopping, right? Risky sexual behavior, gambling, all of which are things that I could say, I'm sober, right? But that's the mind state preceding the drink that's coming. I don't live a spiritual life if I'm doing those things, because I'm using those as my spirits. Right? And there's a book written a few thousand years ago that talks about you can't serve more than one God, right? And so if I'm scratching the itch spiritually with something outside of me to fix something on the inside, I can't tap into what's going on in here. I just don't have an ability to do so. I can't really serve two gods. I'm either playing God myself, or I'm getting rid of me so the God inside of me can help you. That's the whole purpose of all this. And I hate to ruin the end of the story for you, but it turns out that the highest pay grade in AA or spiritually is serving. That's the highest pay grade. The pay isn't all that good, right? But the benefits are incredible. Right? That's the point of all this thing, is where I just need to get me out of the way. But if I don't know what I suffer from, I've got no chance. Right? And when it comes to alcoholism, a lot of times we want to fix the symptoms. Right? So if I have, I don't know, let's call it a cold, okay? Let's say I have a cold, and those still exist, by the way, right? So let's say I have a cold, okay, and I get a little bit of a runny nose. What is it that I suffer from? I don't suffer from a runny nose. I suffer from, right, my immune system doing battle with whatever it is that's going on inside of me. A lot of times we like to cover up and clean up the symptoms and not get down, right, to causes and conditions. Why is it that I'm not feeling very well? Could be because my immune system is weakened for whatever reason, right? It could be that this, let's just call it what it is. The virus might be too strong, right? Whatever the case is, right? But the point is, I need to fix that, not the runny nose. Symptoms of alcoholism look a lot different than causes and conditions. What's a cause and condition for alcoholism? Deep-seated resentment, anger, right? Lust, envy. Another book written a few thousand years ago talks about 7, they call them deadly sins, right? I know it's a religious context, but let's look at the word sin is defined. It's an archery term, which means to miss the mark, right? To not hit the bullseye, right? It's an old archery term. So if we are quote-unquote sinning, that means we are missing the mark of perfection, for whatever the case is. So if of those things, right, the lust, the anger, whatever, all that stuff, right, those are things, those are, with someone like me, those will fuel the addiction, the alcoholism, right? That's the case. That's what I really suffer from. Mindset, right? And, of course, that internal condition. So that step 1 is not a solution for alcoholism, right? It's understanding what the real problem is. And when we can do that, then we can fight the proper enemy. Thanks, guys. Thanks for letting me share. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Marin. That was great. I'm going to open the meeting. Please limit your sharing to 3 minutes, and don't forget to remove your mask. Please keep your shares related to the step. If you feel like drinking or if you have had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. We ask that you please refrain from the use of profanity. We are in a church and on a spiritual journey. And I'll open up the meeting.